Oh, well, of course. Everything looks bad if you remember it.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia Remembers Only Edition, that special podcast series where, just like the iconic jacket suggests, we look back at how cool we thought we were in a moment frozen by time, only to realize later the harsh reality of our shame and failure. I'm Justin, that's Mike.
No refunds, kid.
And together we're drudging up our embarrassing pasts for your collective amusement. So, Mike, it's been a bit since we've done one of these little side piece shows, but schedules really haven't conflated to each other. So we've finally had a chance to sit down and talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, at least, and I think to you to some degree. And we thought, from a nostalgia standpoint, the phenomena of gaming, video gaming, was a neat little thing to kind of explore how it's had this effect on pop culture, but more importantly, how our generation started it.
Yeah, fond memories from our childhood for sure.
So let's just kind of, we were always told that these games would rot our brains.
TV rots your brains.
So let's just prove that point by spitting out a 30-minute podcast about it. Mike, what do you say?
Sure.
All right. Everybody kind of grew up in the era where home gaming wasn't really a thing yet, because I think about the mid 70s, late 70s, we had the phenomena of the coin operated game, Mike, where if you wanted to play some sort of video game, it was kind of relegated to the arcades or the random machine in the bus terminal or things like that. Where
yeah. If you're lucky, your grocery store your mom dragged you to had one. You're like, wow, I can play while she shops.
Yeah. Oh, that was the best too. Like,
oh yeah.
There was nothing more amazing to seeing like maybe one machine in the front of the store at Zayre's or Venture back in the day, where these lousy department stores you just did not want to be. And, being in the 80s, your parents just left you there for 2 hours unsupervised just to watch other people play. Wouldn't even give you a quarter.
It's a whole nother niche in itself, is the pre-arcade video game placements of different like you said, Zayre's. For us, it was like a grocery store, or it was like the side entrance to like Kmart. There'd be like one or two games there. Like just random games too. Like you may get Gorf in one, you may get Donkey Kong in another, but it would be just like an individual game. And we didn't have an arcade here till at least like 81 or 82. So that's all we had for a few years, was just the Lone Ranger kind of video game.
Yeah, it was always such an oasis in a retail environment, because the town I grew up in was not big enough to have anything. So we had a small IGA grocery store that got a Defender machine once, and it became the hub of all social activity for anybody under 15. I mean, the entire town would spend hours and hours around that machine calling who's got next, lining the quarters up on the sill, and like it was fantastic. But that's kind of how you had to deal with the video games in the early onset. A parallel to this, Atari, a fledgling company in Japan, came out with a game called Pong, Mike, and that started in the arcades. It was as games go, it's pretty primitive, but it ultimately made its way into the home. They called it a home console, Mike. And I don't know if you remember when Pong actually was something you could go into Sears and buy. Remember that?
Yes. Yeah, my dad had he had a weird affinity for only buying products for places he worked at. And as a teenager, he worked at Winn-Dixie, which is a grocery store, and he worked at Sears. So all of our groceries came from Winn-Dixie, and all of our retail, clothes included, unfortunately.
Sears Toughskins, solid or plaid. They're tough jeans to beat.
Came from Sears. And Sears, I don't know if they had like like you just mentioned, I guess they had some kind of in with Atari, and they had this Pong game, and we got it. Lo and behold, is one of the few things we actually got that was, on the cusp of like the trend,
Right.
And I remember this. It had like handball, highlight, and hockey. It's just very primitive, graphics, but it was still it was our first home video game. You know, it's like,
right. Yeah, I love how they rebranded like 7 different games. It was just the same screen. It was just
yeah, it was.
it was 2 bars on each side, like knocking a ball back and forth. That's all it was. But no, I'm not playing ping pong. I'm playing high life.
Yeah, it's high life. Man,
Much
I had no
better.
idea what the sport was, but
Yeah.
I knew it had a ball and 2 little
Yeah,
bars, and it went ding,
no, I'm
ding.
playing tennis, Mom. Seriously. But you made a good point about the parents because I remember, I guess back in the day, as they say, parents were much more involved. It was a parental thing. Like my parents were really into this thing, the Pong, and then even the Atari. I
Oh
remember
yeah,
when we graduated to the next, I guess the next tier of home gaming was the Atari 2600, which we all have become beloved. But like my parents, like they were the primer for buying this. We were
oh
just
yeah.
along for the ride.
It
And
came out. It came out during the holidays or whenever relatives would come over
yeah,
to visit on like July 4th or something. Bring out the Pong.
yeah, it was like playing. It was like the equivalent of like playing Parcheesi. You would break out the
Hmm.
Atari, and it's so far because it's drifted so far away from that. But I guess we'll get to that here in a minute. But I remember like my parents loved playing Asteroids, for example. It was a family affair.
Oh
And
yeah.
remember the game that came with that Combat?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
never has a game so small become so big just because it came with the game with the console.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Combat was kind of like the highlight thing where there were like 8 or 9 different games, but it was always just one tank driving around a different maze shooting another tank. But the thing was you could play with someone else, and that was what was so cool about it. It was you could play with your friends, and the winner would stay, and then you would play the next person. Like Ric Flair said, Mike, to be the man, you got to beat the man.
But to be the man, you gotta beat the man, and I'm saying, woo!
Right.
That's right.
You could sit on those sticks for hours just playing with your friends, and it was just a fantastic, albeit primitive way. But we didn't know how primitive it was. But to us, it was state of the art. And that's
Yeah. I mean, it was a joystick and a button, but it was still to see it actually come alive on TV, and you could interact with the TV. That was like,
yeah.
yeah, whoa.
Remember the crazy like wire adapter you had to hook up to your UHF antenna in the back? It had like a little. It was like
Yes.
a toggle switch. You had to slide the guide over to the game
Yes.
versus.
Pre-AV cables. Yeah.
Remember
That was really primitive stuff.
some very creative design to get that hooked up to our
Mhm.
TV in some cases. But Atari was fun. I mean, there were some great games for Atari, of course, and uh, you know, like Asteroids was like the biggest one, but Combat came
Space
with it.
Invaders for
Oh,
me.
that
Oh wow! I came in. How many hours I played Space Invaders, or even the really bad basketball game they had also at the same time. It
oh,
was just
I remember the Atari Golf was one I was hooked on, where it was just and I guess the primitive graphics in the way like there were some very funny kind of anatomical considerations like where they put the golf club. Like you would hold the button down, you'd like rear back in the swing, and like the baseball game was horrible, but again, horrible is a point
it's
of reference.
relative.
Really. It was
Yeah.
just for that's purpose was really really terrible. But the Atari like ruled our life for a long time, and remember the paddle hand the paddle attachments that you would hook up, the little
Yeah,
for
I
like
remember
driving
something.
games, like little wheel you could turn.
Yeah, did they ever come out with like a gun that had a little light source? Or was that for the 5200?
Yeah, that's for the next
That's
one.
later
Yeah.
on.
But
Yeah.
I remember my dad laughing to no end for the game. I think it was called Circus Atari, where it was like 2 clowns would like you had to use the wheel controller on it, and 2 clowns would like teeter on a teeter totter, and they jump up and like break all the balloons. And my dad
Oh.
would lose his shit every time like you would die because the little clown that was jumping when he would crash out, he'd like smack on his head, and his like little square head went flat.
They
My
always had
dad,
the greatest sounds too for like deaths.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. So Atari kind of took over the landscape for a very long time, and then but in the wings, of course, the Japanese were way ahead of us, Mike, and they started to develop the next tier of entertainment, which was called the Nintendo Entertainment System, Mike.
oh wow.
This one featured 8 bits of video glory, and when this hit the shelves, the world stopped, and everybody had to have one, including yours truly. That was all we were really. It was such a big leap, I guess, technology-wise, to get the Nintendo system. And of course, that came with the Super Mario Brothers. Michael, everybody knows how great that game was.
Yeah.
One of the most played games of all time, even to this day. It's the one that came. The game that came was Super Mario Bros., but also had the Slash Duck Hunt. Mike, remember? This came with the gun.
That's right.
Which is probably why Americans loved it so much. But remember,
and the dog that would laugh at you if you missed.
How many times did you try to shoot that dog?
Hated that dog.
But the Nintendo was just the end all be all. If you had one of those in your house, you were an A-list celebrity. You were the most popular kid on the block. These things went with us to school, went with us to college. We just kind of grew up on this system. I spent most of my formative preteen and teen years playing these games all night long with my friends, the overnighters, where we would just get Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, for example, and we would just play till we beat the game. Remember, the beating the game thing? That was always the best part.
Oh yeah.
Because prior to this, you really just had this thing where Nintendo introduced a new type of game. It wasn't more so much about high scores. It was about from like high score concepts to like a story. Like the Legend of Zelda was another one like that, where you didn't even keep score. Your character started this journey and it finished, and it drove people crazy because if you couldn't finish the story, you got stuck. There was no internet to look on. It says, what do I do? How do I open this door? Or where's the hidden key? Remember all that nonsense?
Oh yeah, you just had to basically it was like word of mouth. Even the code for Contra, where you had to learn the left A B right up. The
up
code
down left right. Yeah.
Or even the hidden pipes on the original Mario game. You had to learn how to get from a warp pipe 1 to 2, then you could jump to 4, and you could skip over to 7. It was like, wow, I could do this, or I could just play the game like a normal person. But no, you had to find out that some other guy found this out. How did they do that?
Yeah, it was so great. And remember, you mentioned like Atari and Sears. Remember when Sears would only carry like the knockoff versions, like. There would be like the formal Atari name, and then like Sears would have like some bastardized version of it.
Yeah, don't remind me, Justin.
Sorry.
You brought up a bad memory just a little bit ago, because I had the Radio Shack TRS-80 computer. Everybody else had Commodore, but you could get these games with it, and one of the games was Clowns and Balloons, which
that was Circus Atari. Yeah.
And again, it was, and then there was like a Missile Command game that wasn't Missile Command. It was like
Missile Control,
something like that. Yeah, it was very similar. Like I had a couple of those knockoffs, and
poor Mike.
I mean, we had those, but you also had I had a friend that had the ColecoVision, and
there you
that was
go.
one of the first consoles where you got actual legit arcade games ported into a home video game.
Their version of Donkey Kong was exactly like the stand-up arcade game.
Oh yeah, I play like Frogger and Gorf on it, and our favorite game was Burger Time, where you were like this. What a dumb game! You were the chef. You were the chef guy. It's basically like if people know the app, it was Sky Burger today. But anyway, you try to make this burger and you dodge ladders, and the enemies are like hot dogs and pickles and
the notorious hard-boiled egg.
And fried egg guy. Yeah, I did not like those guys at all. But the game that my friend had that was just so awful, it was a Dukes of Hazzard racing game.
No way.
It brought. I was thinking about that today, and it was a PTSD moment for me. I was like, oh my god. And then I had the friend that had the, literally up the next street. This guy had the Intellivision, which was like, I forgot.
Yeah, that was like the Atari's like redheaded cousin.
Yeah, but it was like when you first saw it, it was like looking at you're like looking at a Unix computer. It's like, oh my gosh, what is it?
Yeah.
The keypad had all these numbers on it. It had the little touch dial thing.
Yeah, it looked like
there.
a cell phone. It was not a joystick at all.
Yeah, it was so complicated. He had a football game that we played for hours, but it was just so you had to program into plays and all this. It was really like I said, it was this for us. This was like looking at in the future at a personal computer kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember they even had the ads of like George Plimpton on there talking about in television, the next generation.
It was way ahead of its time.
It was really amazing. But like I said, after you play Atari with the little joystick and the button, you're like, oh, what? What is this? It's just so.
It was more of a thinking man's video game. That's why it didn't last.
I think it died out pretty quick after it came, kind of flamed out.
I remember that George Plimpton commercial. He talked about the Intellivision features the graphic capability never seen before, including the total destruction of a planet. I remember seeing I think it was kind of like the Death Star type thing blowing up, and like graphically, you'd never seen anything like that before, and it just blew your mind, and it just really kind of captures our level of technology at that point and how crazy we thought that was. But it's like kids today would laugh. They would laugh at us for laughing at that. It was just crazy.
But it just shows you the competition, though. Like how quickly these companies just started racing to get like the best graphics or mimic what kids could find in the arcade to get them out of the arcades and literally bring them home
Yeah, and that was ultimately, I guess you could say that probably led that particular fact led to its ultimate downfall, because there was so much pressure to put new games out into the market. I think the most notorious example of this is the E.T. game, widely regarded as the worst video game ever made. But for those that have played it, it's actually kind of fun. And there's hundreds of YouTube documentaries about this. We encourage our audience to listen to that. But the thing about the E.T. game was the studio gave those guys like a stupid deadline, like 4 weeks, starting from concept. They had to get a game out in like 6 weeks, and they told them just whatever it takes, get this to market, because they wanted to capitalize on the cash grab of the ET phenomenon that was going on. So that they forced these crappy games out that the consumer thought was just a ripoff, and it really got to the point where the until then really video game loving public started to see some flaws and started to push back and say, well, this isn't good enough for us anymore. And that's the first time that did that, and it basically just bankrupted Atari at that point, because the Nintendo had already seen those cues and started to adapt better graphics, and this market has been so cutthroat competitive ever since, Mike. I mean, Jesus, I can't think of a more cutthroat industry than the video game industry.
Yeah. Once the mid '80s crash ended and then Nintendo came out of the ashes, and then you had Sega, and then Activision, everybody else just kind of came out,
Yeah, there was one interesting intermediate there between the simple 8-bit generation and the one we currently know as today, and that was the Sega Genesis. And then also its partner and system, the Super Nintendo, which utilized this new 16-bit technology, which was twice the 8-bit, which is what they sold it as. But the catalog for the Sega Genesis was ridiculous, because he had all these third-party studios, which is another phenomenon that sprang from this, where you could develop these new companies that developed video games, which had never existed before, all started to spring up in the valley. And you could license out or contract out video games at this point. These companies could, so you get all these third parties making all these great titles, and the proliferation of games for the Sega Genesis is ridiculous. There's like 14,000 games for the Sega Genesis, and I probably played pretty much all of them. I always had them, and they're always $60. They're $60 now, and they were $60 back in 1982. I just don't understand how that inflation hasn't touched that thing one way or the other. It's weird.
Yeah, it didn't affect Super Nintendo or the GameCube games. Trust me, those are literally like $2 or $3, especially when you see like NHL '96 or
one of my favorites ever.
I want to know who plays some of these games, or some. And the tie-ins to like you were saying about E.T., the tie-ins to movies and TV shows and celebrities just got out of control, with especially like some of the Sega titles you're talking about, and just crazy amounts of games are just thrown at us.
Yeah, some of them were good, but most of them were not that good. But again, it's one of those things like it's akin to movies. They were good because that's all we had.
Oh yeah.
It was a smaller market. The scope of the games that we had in front of us was not that big, so you made do with what you had. As the games got bigger, you could be a little more selective, a little more finicky, and a little more critical. And I think that's created this environment that we have now. But I brought a Sega Genesis with me to college in 1989, Mike, and I was the only person that had a Genesis on the entire floor. And oddly enough, I made a lot of friends that week, Mike. And I can't remember a time I ever came home from a class where some dolt was sitting in his underwear on my bed playing my Sega Genesis because
playing your stuff.
Yeah, but the dorm environment's so weird. I couldn't imagine ever living in a dorm now, but I did, and I loved it during the time. But maybe that's for another show, Mike. But
yeah, same here.
But people would sit on your bed in their underwear, and you didn't even think about it.
You're lucky they're in their underwear. Let's put it
yeah. Well, I was. Yeah, I never got pink eye, so I have to assume they were all right. But yeah, so the games just kind of took over the whole world, and then of course, in the early 2000s, that's when the zeitgeist switched to the new super high end technology that was present with the Xbox. The Xbox really changed the whole world, and then the PlayStation, they kind of came out at the same time.
Yeah,
and that was the final tier of the console wars, and they're still going at it to this day. Xbox and PlayStation have been putting out these new consoles trying to outdo each other.
Oh yeah, you saw the Sony ponies and the Xbox nuts.
Each player fan base says the other one's crap, and the gamers that play each one, they all say the other fan base is crap. But I took a little vacation during this era, Mike. I wasn't much of a gamer from 95 to 2005. I took a few years off and got responsible and did like real things, but I also kind of started to ease back when I had more disposable income and a little more free time, and I got into these for a while, and then I realized that gaming wasn't what I remembered it to be. I don't know if it's because the games changed or I did. It's probably both. But the new generation of games really focuses on multiplayer, where you took advantage of the internet's capability and allows you to play against other players across the world, Mike. And the games I played, pretty toxic environment. The folks I was playing with had a lot of the Call of Duty crowd and the Grand Theft Auto crowd. Not a big fan of the multiplayer online stuff, Mike. Those communities are they're so toxic and filled with little kids using language they should not be using. It's weird. They all seem to know lots of like interesting sexual characteristics about my mother.
Funny that.
They always like to refer to the parts of the other people's body I could eat on a daily basis. So I got kind of fed up with that and kind of took the old man route and got into PC gaming, where I can kind of like slow down and play, thinking man's games or strategy games or things that make me use my brain as opposed to my non-existent reflexes, hand-eye coordination. Those things don't exist anymore. So
I'm an old man. I hate everything but Matlock.
I've kind of come full circle. I started playing the first generation of games that ever came out, and now I've kind of come around to where I play a lot of games more than I ever have, but I kind of go in a more sheltered environment playing games by myself. So, Mike, I know you're more of a console type guy, and I think your son's got a wide array of games, and it's really kind of a major focus in your family, at least, right?
Oh yeah. We still have an original PlayStation and the NES here, and still use it. We have a Sega Saturn, we have Sega, Genesis, we have the Super Nintendo, GameCube. These are all OG games consoles that my son collected, and I don't know what made him so interested. As kids, I used to play, for my kids, and they would watch me play like Tetris and stuff and get like really antsy watching me play. And I always considered gaming post like 95 or so a giant waste of time, because I drew all the time. I wanted to be productive and draw, but I always had time to play with my kids. And it's funny, just within the last few months, my son and I have to play Mario Kart, and he's modded it so that we can only race against the little babies and just beat them up with like Bowser and Wario. And long story short, we probably use some of the same language you hear online from some of the gamers. But we do it in our house. We don't, we express ourselves a little bit differently, but it's kind of a cathartic experience just to to play on the original Wii and just do that for a little bit. And like I said, it's kind of cool that he's got all these games. He's got all the DSs, the Game Boys. I even gave him my original electronic quarterback, that I used to have.
Oh wow, yeah.
And he's even got the Game & Watch. Remember that from Nintendo back in the day? He's a completionist about some of this stuff,
Did Fred Savage let you borrow the Nintendo Game Glove?
I never got the glove. No, I feel bad about that, But it's funny because I think when we were kids, at least this is my perspective, that video gaming was kind of like social drinking. You would go to a kid's house, y'all would have a party, everybody would gather around the games, and you would be the best at I don't know, River Raiders, and then play that, and then go back home, go back to whatever you're doing, go back to school. But you would just still, like you said about the dorm life, you would still go back to the games and just play it. Now to me, gaming is like almost like like Barney Gumble, like drinking like an alcoholic or a crack house. Like I just think of gaming now as almost an addiction for some of these people. It has to be done continuously. And some of these online gamers, I feel like that's all they do. You literally hear about the guy who's like in his basement and there's bags of Cheetos and energy drinks all over the place, and I can kind of picture that, but that's not how it was, And again, this is our nostalgic part of it, but it literally wasn't like that. It was games for kids, and like you said, your dad would pop in and want to play too. It used to be more of a family experience, but now it's kind of more of, I don't know. Like I said, it's more serious, and it's actually a competition. It's not just recreational use.
That's a great segue to kind of wrap things up, Mike, because I think it's come full circle. You mentioned people that play games 24/7. We have a phenomenon, like Twitch streamers, for example. The whole generation grew up with games, and the Twitch, the streaming industry is ridiculously huge. I follow hundreds of these guys. They're gamers that play games all day and get sponsorships, and gamers watch these gamers play. And I've heard people say, well, why would you watch someone play a video game? It's so stupid. Like, well, okay. Well, I asked them, well, do you play basketball? He goes, yeah. Do you watch basketball players? Yeah. What's the difference? They don't seem to see that argument, and it's a billion. Video games now are $1 billion industry, not just the games themselves, but the people, the cultural phenomenon. People watch people play games. They're part of our life now, And
if they have enough charisma, like a Markiplier playing Five Nights at Freddy's, or there's this guy I watch called Queso who does like horror games that are like indie, really stupid games, but he makes it funny just by playing it, you're right. There's some entertainment value in actually watching it, at least from my point of view.
I watch a guy called Thread Menace, and he plays Valheim. It's a PC game, and it's a survival game, and it's slow. But he talks through it, and he's got a pleasant sounding voice, and he's funny, and he's charming. And I feel like I know this guy. I feel like he's my brother because I watch his exploits. I watch him play an 8-hour game playthrough. I watch him play these games, and I know his personality, and we chat. We chat back and forth in the chat line, and he responds to my chat. So it's just me and like 14,000 other people, and I have this kind of weird connection with all these people, independent of each other, where we all have this thing where we bond and we watch these dumb shows. It's crazy. But games are in such a way now. They're not just something like when we started, we talked about it, where it was just like, mom and dad would bring out Life or Monopoly or Parcheesi or, Hungry Hippos. They bring out the Atari. It's now it is a media force. It makes more money. The video game industry makes more money than movies and music combined. We've reached to the point where, major motion picture stars get cast in games now, and games hire Hollywood writers to write the scope of the story arc of each game. It's just got to the point now where it's just so high edge. But from a nostalgia standpoint, Mike, I think you hit on very well. The biggest market, one of the biggest markets in gaming, is the retro gaming market. Not only with old farts like us that play these games because we can't keep up with the new ones, but like your son's a great example. He's got no reason to like these old games because he's not of that age, but he appreciates them.
No, he's 23 and he still, loves these.
He wants to write code and he wants to understand how these games are made, and he understands that there's a purity to the way these things are designed. And what I find interesting about that is like that retro gaming thing being so present. I have a handheld video game system that's got every arcade game ever made. It's basically the size of a Game Boy. Every game that's ever been made is on that thing, and I sit there and play that like a maniac. Play old games of Donkey Kong, or I play old games of Asteroids, or Gorf, or Tron, or all those games that I pumped millions of billions of dollars with as a kid in quarter by quarter. I can play them. I can play 5 of these games on my watch right now. I have an Atari watch where I sit and play Pong all day at work when I'm supposed to be getting stuff done. But why do we go back to these games, Mike? It's simple because modern tech can't replace an experience to this day. I don't play Donkey Kong because it's a visual feast. I play Donkey Kong because I remember what it was like to play that when I was a kid. And I don't want to play a 16-hour story game. I want to climb up to the top of that tower and save that princess, or die trying.
in what, 20? Is it 25 seconds or whatever? What's the average Donkey Kong?
The average Donkey Kong game takes about 47 seconds before you die. It's you put another quarter in.
It's right in our schedules.
It's ridiculously hard, but. I think the story arc of the video game is very kind of common to the story arc that we kind of emphasize on our podcast. Is like the games were so great back then, and they were pure and they were innocent and they were well made and the art was great given the limitations. And you can insert different words out of that sentence and describe a movie. Compared to today's movies, they're shinier. You can do more, but at their core, at their heart, they just don't deliver like they did. And I think there's
nice. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Some sort of correlation between that. But anyway, we just wanted to find something else to complain about, and this filled out a half hour.
Is it complaining, or are we just looking back fondly? It's
a little both.
We're not really. Yeah, we're complaining about today's stuff, but we're also. It's like we're not trying to bury what current day. We're just trying to praise the past.
Yeah, and to be fair, I play modern games. I love modern games. I can't wait for a lot of them to come out. But
right.
If I was on a desert island and I say, hey, do you want to play Fallout or do you want to play Ghouls and Ghosts? I know which one I'm going to pick. It's one of those things where it's what you grew up with, it's what you feel comfortable with. And
I want to play a game of Arkanoid or Breakout right now, real bad.
There you go. So you know what? Why don't we just quit gapping and just go? I'll come over, have Alex dust off the ColecoVision, and make some popcorn. We'll see where this goes. So. Anyway, so that's going to wrap it up for this short little episode about video game history and how it relates to two grumpy old jerks. But if you like what you heard for some reason, don't forget to check out our movie podcast. That's at Grumpy Nostalgia. You can check us out on Instagram there. We have a webpage called grumpynostalgia.buzzsprout.com. You can check out all of our information about our show there. We have a YouTube channel that nobody watches, so that's good as well. You can send us an email if you'd like. It's at nostalgiagrumps@gmail.com. You can give us ideas about other topics you might want us to cover in some of these little sideshow episodes. So there you go. So Mike, that will wrap it up for this week's show. Anything else you want to say to the game before we head out and start playing our games?
Hey, man, just spill a Coke on my ET cartridge.
Free dude. All right. So for Mike J, this is Justin, and we'll see you again next time.